Fabulous Mamas podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Joy, and we believe in empowering people through storytelling and education. And I'm so glad that you are here. I'm really pumped about today's podcast. We have on Ryan, who is a co-founder of Needed, and we're going to talk all about prenatals, what to look for in them, what to avoid, how it's filling in nutritional gaps. And they're going to tell us all about, Ryan's going to tell us all about their amazing company. And it's the prenatal that I've been taking since May. I didn't take it with my first pregnancy. I didn't know about it. And then I found it and I was like, holy crap, this product is amazing. And just the amount of care and research and sourcing and everything that goes into it is very wild. Dosing, everything. So I'm so excited that they agreed to come on the podcast and excited to share that information with you. Before we dive in, I promised that I would share about us having COVID. I probably sound a lot better than I did last week. It's getting better every single day. But yes, our family ended up with COVID. Vito had it. It's weird because we actually had differing symptoms. He had fever and chills and body aches and other things I won't share. Whereas I barely got warm like one day, but for me, it was all like upper respiratory, just coughing and can't breathe and severe congestion. We both had a headache for like a day or two. And then his did kind of turn into like some congestion and coughing as well. And then Jovi didn't have any symptoms for several days. And then one day she spiked a fever of 103 and she was 103 all day and just a little grumpy. And then she woke up the next day with no fever, but was still just kind of tired, napped a little more, wanting to nurse a lot more and just kind of a little clingy. And then she was fine. So we all did end up getting COVID, which it just seems like this time around, at least where we live outside the Chicago area, everyone is getting it here. And, and it's crazy because even like how we got it, like we really weren't around anybody. The people we were around were fully vaccinated and boosted, and they weren't around really anybody else. So, it just seems like this variant is not picky about who it chooses at all, to get COVID. And, I talk about it a little bit with Ryan at the beginning of the podcast that I'm actually almost relieved that we got it now versus a little bit later. But I will say it was a little bit scary because I'm not like I don't freak out about things really, but you just hear the horror stories with COVID, right? And we kind of all know somebody who's been tragically affected by it. And so you just aren't sure how you're going to be affected. Like I know somebody who is very healthy, one of the healthiest people I know, like health nut, who got it and was very sick for a long time and had a very hard time recovering. And I'm like, I can't deal with that being almost 8 months pregnant and with a 1.5-year-old. Like, how am I going to navigate that if I get that sick? And so, just kind of the unknown of what it might turn into. I would say I stayed pretty calm, but there's just kind of that, all the things that we've heard over the last couple of years of, how sick am I going to get? So I'm super thankful that we had it pretty mildly and that we're recovering very nicely. And I'm excited to go back out into the world. Not that we were doing much before, but even just running errands and seeing a couple of friends before the baby arrives and we kind of cocoon again for a little bit. So we are part of the COVID crew now. It took a couple of years to get to us, but we ended up getting it and we're recovering nicely. I've heard from a lot of mamas who have had it, their households have had it. someone who was on the podcast before, she recently just had a baby, and she was COVID positive while she had the baby. And I'm probably going to have her on to share her story of what that was like. Because it does change your birthing experience as well. So that was another thing I was really nervous about. But yeah, I feel like I can start to breathe again. I'm breathing better at night, which is the biggest thing, because if I can't breathe through my nose at night, I do not sleep. So I just kind of had a week of tossing and turning and trying everything that I could safely do in pregnancy to try to sleep. And it was pretty miserable. So, and I'm just a new person. Like last night I slept great and Jovi slept in. So, I would just feel like rejuvenated that I was able to sleep. And I don't know if you're following me on Instagram, but I did wake up with those weird scratches underneath my chin, these mystery like scratches this morning. I'm not sure how they got there, and I am kind of perplexed by that and wondering like what happened in my sleep. I had to have been just like pinching the crap out of myself because they're long marks. It's not like a spider bite mark or anything like that. And yeah, I don't know what I was doing or what was going on or how I woke up with these, but it actually hurts. My chin hurts. So just thought I'd share that little bit on here too. All right, we are going to dive into this interview because I'm so excited for you to hear from Ryan. All right, everyone, I'm super excited about today's interview. I have Ryan Woodbury on, and she is one of the co-founders of Needed, and it is the prenatal that I've been taking for a while now, and I'm really glad that I discovered it. I actually, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I think I tried out 3 or 4 different prenatals, and I would just kind of switch it up because I'm like, not one of them has everything that I want. So I'm going to take this one during this phase of my pregnancy, and I'm going to take this one during this phase of my pregnancy, and kind of went down that path with her, and even postpartum. So I discovered Needed, it was before this pregnancy, before I got pregnant with this pregnancy. And so as soon as I knew that we were trying again, I started ordering them, and I've absolutely loved using them. But we're going to dive into what to look for in a prenatal, and just kind of all the different things behind it. Cause I know that there's a lack of information out there. There's some information that doesn't really matter out there. And it's something that Ryan's super passionate about. So I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. Remind me, how many weeks are you into this pregnancy?
30. Well, when the podcast comes out, it's going to come out next week. So I'll be 34 weeks, and you're due soon.
Yeah. So I'm like 37 and a half weeks. So definitely in the final territory, which is exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's exciting and nerve-wracking. Yeah. Is this your first?
It is my first. Yeah. So it'll be a new experience, but we're really excited.
Yeah.
And, but can't believe it's just about here.
I know. I feel like it goes really slow at times. And then at the end, you're like, oh my gosh, I only have this much time left. I have so much to do. And that's like the phase I'm in right now, where I'm like, crap, we have a lot to do.
Yeah. I think like I was very much, we don't need to go on a complete tangent here, but a couple weeks ago, it was maybe when I was around your stage, it was like a little bit of panic. And at this point, I'm sort of like, all right, in order for her to, I'm planning for a home birth. In order for her to, actually come and to make that a real, I need to just let the world take care of a few things and not overstress myself. So trying that, it's not easier said than done as much as possible.
Yeah.
We're lucky that we have an amazing sort of team in place to be able to support.
Yeah. Which is vital. I was going to say, but it might be too soon, that January 31st is a great birthday to have. It's mine, my grandma's, and Justin Timberlake's. So if it happens on January 31st, it's like 3 epic people.
Yeah. At this point, it's like, okay, she's going to be a little Aquarius baby for sure.
Yes.
My husband's birthday is this Saturday. And then I feel like a number of my closest girlfriends are all end of January, early February. So I'm feeling good about the time. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Mine could be a Pisces, or I think Aries is what comes next, or Taurus.
That might be right.
Yeah.
I don't know it close enough.
Yeah. Me neither. But, yeah, Aquarius people are awesome. But that's really exciting. I'm super excited for you, and I can't wait to hear how all of that goes. That's so much fun. We're planning a birth center birth this time. I had a Jovi in the hospital last time, and then birth center this time, and then I'm hoping home birth next time. So
exciting to just try it
I'm easing my husband into it, because even like when we did the birth center tour, he's like, so this is a home birth, but like at somebody else's house. I was like, basically, yeah.
That was a big part, I would say, of our process too. Of even before we, I've known for a long time I've wanted a home birth. I come from something where my parents think, a family where my parents think I'm crazy. Definitely makes them nervous. But I had a preschool teacher who had a home birth, and I don't know, somehow way back when that seed was planted. And my husband and I actually interviewed a bunch of like midwives even before we started trying, because I was like, I know I need to get him kind of there before I'm ready to conceive. And luckily he was a quicker convert than I expected. Yeah.
And my husband. Yeah, I'm used to it. A lot of my family birthed at home. My sister had all 4 of her kids at home. My cousins, I come from like a home birthing, homeschooling thing on my dad's side of the family. And it's very, very foreign to my husband and his family. So
I'm just glad that, and hopefully in time that choices are made even more accessible to women in this country. I think in LA, we're pretty lucky with the multitude of choices, but honestly, the biggest thing is just where a mom's going to feel most comfortable. And I think knowing for yourself where you're going to actually be able to relax. And I think for some, that's knowing that you have the support of a hospital right behind you. And for others, like me, that causes me to, tense up right away. And I think optimistic about supporting on whatever journey is best for you.
Well, and I actually, after this, we'll dive into the nutrition, I promise, guys. So I did have my daughter in the hospital, and I was employed by the hospital. I worked with a group of midwives there. So I was very familiar with the staff, very comfortable birthing there, because I had been a doula at these births where the midwives were supporting.
So you really knew that.
Right. And the nursing staff was amazing. If I hadn't found this hospital, I would not have had a hospital birth. But it was also like September 2020 and COVID. And so we had gone back and forth on what to do. And now this time around, there's very strict restrictions on birth center births. And if I were to test positive within 2 weeks of giving birth, you cannot birth at the birthing center. You have to go to a hospital. And so I was freaking out about that, because although everything went great my first time, I'm like, I really do not want to birth in a hospital this time around. And then we end up getting COVID now. So, which we weren't trying to, we were actually being super careful. And,
it's everywhere right now.
And it's everywhere. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like my husband and I are talking, we're like, we're going to end up getting it because everyone we know, does not matter whether you're fully vaccinated, whether you've had it, whether you're anything, everyone's getting it right now. And I'm like, I almost hope that we get it now versus in March. Like that's going to suck, but I hope we don't get it at all, but we ended up getting it. So, and thankfully, it sucked for a few days and, but we didn't get crazy sick. And so thankfully, we're at the tail end of it now. And I have a little bit more peace about okay, I know I can birth at the birthing center now, because it's very unlikely I'm going to catch it again in the next couple months. So
yeah.
That's affecting so many people's decisions too. So
totally. I mean, we're in full, almost March 2020 lockdown because of the final stretch. It's not worth it. But then, I'm lucky. I see 5 different practitioners every week, so I could still catch it from, a midwife or an acupuncturist, or they're all being extraordinarily careful, but there's always the chance, with just the rates being so high, the likelihood that a certain number of their patients are positive right now is pretty high.
Yeah, it's crazy. We're going to take a quick break. If you've listened to the show for a while now, you know that I'm obsessed with playing Best Fiends. And right now it's kind of needed. There's so much like holiday chaos, and it's nice to have a little pick-me-up when I need a break from all of the holiday action. Best Fiends is a unique gameplay that has it all. A storyline, collectible fiends, tons of fun prizes. You can connect with your Facebook friends on there, do little competitions, do some side puzzle solving, which is what I love to do. And even if your holiday travels take you off the beaten path, you can still play Best Fiends. There's no Wi-Fi required. It's also always challenging, which is something that I also need as a mom. Sometimes you just need a little action for your brain when you've been hanging out with a 1-year-old all day. So it is my go-to. Download Best Fiends free today on the App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R, Best Fiends. Well, since this is your first kid, how did you get passionate about prenatal vitamins, and why do you care like what's in them? Because Needed started a little while ago. So it's interesting to me that like you would kind of have the passion about that, even though you didn't have any kids yet.
Absolutely. I think it's a great question and a perfect place to start. And I think it, in some ways it was surprising that myself and then my co-founder, Julie, both kind of latched onto this in such a big way before either of us were moms. We met as next door neighbors in graduate school, immediately connected over, both of us have had, kind of lifetime interest in health and nutrition, that was kind of always a passion area for us, where we spent all of our extra time. I was an environmental science major in college, focused on food systems. So, very focused on sourcing high quality food and maximizing nutrition, and didn't know that much, truthfully, about the prenatal space at all. Nor was I think like some women are, very drawn to kids and babysat a ton. I never babysat. In high school, I worked for an aquarium and cleaned shark tanks. That wasn't the path I was on. So in some ways it's a little bit shocking, but I think I am someone that's very motivated by big problems. And I think when we were in graduate school, a lot of my closest friends were a little bit further ahead of where my husband and I were at the time in terms of readiness to have children. And we're watching them go through the process and I think begin to face, the gamut of experiences from, getting pregnant before you're ready to significant infertility challenges, to hyperemesis all through pregnancy, to very difficult postpartum recoveries, to name the list, and just began to, through friends, I think, ask more questions and begin to learn more. And I think I was just, and Julie at the same time, we were just shocked to find that nutrition was so underrepresented in the care of our friends. And I think just intuitively felt like a lot of these outcomes have to have been improved in some way if they were properly nutritionally supported. And I had enough, understanding of supplements and biochemistry to start kind of looking at their prenatals that they were taking and just like, this doesn't seem to be helpful or high quality. So that just led a process of, I think, learning and discovery. And the more we learned, the more I think upset we got about the status quo. And that ended up being a big motivator that both of us knew we wanted to be mothers one day. And I think it turned into this motivation of, oh my gosh, let's prepare ourselves as best we can. And in doing so, we can support so many other women in being able to as well. So that was really sort of the impetus. And that was about 4 years ago at this point. And really what we discovered, and, at that time was basically 97% of women in the US will take a prenatal while in pregnancy. And the research indicates that 95% plus of them are nutrient deficient. And there's some pretty strong clinical data around how, when these nutrient deficiencies are rectified, outcomes for both mom and baby can be improved. But the clinical research is lacking in everything we wanted to know, because unfortunately in this country, just, in the world, women's health issues, especially around pregnancy, are just really understudied. So that led us to to spend a ton of time with various women's health practitioners to really understand what they were seeing in practice and what clinical protocols they were implementing to improve outcomes. And so we spent about 3 years working with an interdisciplinary group of practitioners that led to us launching really what we're known for now, which is our complete plan, which is a 4-part sort of supplements protocol to optimally support you before, during, and after pregnancy. And really the frame was, food sadly isn't enough. And that was maybe my biggest shock as a environmental science major. Thought I was doing all the right things in terms of, I was lucky to be able to source meat from farms and shop mostly at the farmer's market, and discovered pretty quickly through nutritional testing that I had, even myself, pretty significant gaps that, had I been pregnant at that time, could lead to poor pregnancy or birthing outcomes. And then, so there was a need for supplements, but existing supplement quality just wasn't there. So we wanted to recreate it from the ground up, but needed to be able to do that with looking at the clinical research and then filling in the gaps in the research with what our practitioner base was seeing working day in and day out through their own testing and patient monitoring.
Mm-hmm. There's so much information out there with prenatals and a lot of misinformation. I believe there's a huge percentage of pregnant people that aren't even taking prenatals. And then there's just take something. Something's better than nothing, which isn't necessarily true either, because if it's not in a form that your body can absorb, if it's not, the right dosing or whatever, is it really making a difference? And I feel like the only information that's kind of given is oh, you're pregnant. Are you taking a prenatal? Make sure you get on a prenatal. And that's it. So I would love to have you talk about what are the nutrients that we really need to be looking for? Or not necessarily nutrients coming from food, but just what do we need to be looking for in a prenatal?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so right. I think the most, common question that you'll get from your main, obstetricians are amazing, support, very well intentioned, but don't often have nutritional education. And I think the main recommendation is take a prenatal, take anything, it doesn't matter. And I think we found very quickly that that is so far from the truth, that there's such a wide variation in product quality out there. And really kind of what we're looking for in a prenatal is basically, as you'd mentioned, sort of, does it have the right nutrient forms? So nutrients your body can actually absorb and put to use. This can get confusing and deep into biochemistry, but there are many forms of magnesium, for example. Certain forms like magnesium glycinate are very easy for your body to absorb and put to use. Other forms, like magnesium oxide, is why you will use magnesium as a laxative, is not very well absorbed, and why it can help if you are kind of constipated. So, great in that intended use, but if you're looking to use it to up your magnesium levels, you won't be supported. But magnesium oxide is often much cheaper than some of the other more bioavailable forms of magnesium. So it can often appear in prenatal supplements, and then it's going to be very difficult to actually meet your magnesium needs through it. And most of us are depleted in magnesium. So nutrient form matters. Dosage really matters. And that's one that I think can be scary or confusing, because most of us know to reference the supplements facts kind of panel on a bottle, and you see on the right-hand side of any packaged food sort of those percent daily values that you're getting, 100% of your vitamin C in right now, or 1,000% of your, sodium intake. And I think it's helpful to know that those can be a good reference point, but most prenatals on the market right now are designed around kind of meeting your 100% kind of daily value needs to that regard that were, set by the government. And that seems like, oh, that makes sense. I'm getting, 100% of my needs met. But I think what you need to understand is those basically levels were set mostly back in World War II in the early 1940s for soldiers going off to war to avoid a disease condition. And very few of them have been significantly updated since then. And I think, again, helpful grounding point is none of us want a disease, but the philosophy of meeting your nutritional needs in pregnancy, the most nutritionally intensive kind of time of a woman's life, pregnancy or postpartum, while nursing, with a philosophy of how do you avoid a disease versus how do we support the body optimally. There can often be really wide ranges in the amounts of certain nutrients you need to support yourself optimally. So for dosage, we really looked at, and that was the significant review with the clinician base, pulling data around what is actually changing blood levels in women, such that we can much more closely look to what is going to support an average woman optimally versus just barely meeting her needs. And I think to just throw some caution out that for most women, the good news is that if you're a healthy woman, you have what you need to support a healthy baby. Who really loses is yourself, because you're giving everything that you have to support that baby. And if you're taking dosages in a minimalistic, less is more kind of mindset, you're going to be the one that's left depleted and, not feeling as great in pregnancy or slowing down your recovery for years thereafter. Mm-hmm. So form, dosage, and then certainly there can be, those I would say would be the kind of the most important, but we really do look at where do the nutrients come from, making sure the supply chain is appropriately clean, as it isn't the case for a lot of other nutrients. And then I think lastly is, which can be a tricky one, is how do you get these nutrients in a way that you can actually take the product every day, which can be, a difficult thing for many of us women, especially in the first trimester.
Mm-hmm. Right. I know a lot of people who struggle like swallowing or prenatal or whatever, which is great because you guys actually have a powdered form of your vitamins, which is really cool. And we'll get into that as well. But how much so we need this added nutrition because none of us are getting all of it from our diet. Is it possible to meet some of these requirements through food, or is it basically you need supplementation no matter what?
So I think if you were extraordinarily proactive and willing to eat a lot of very nutrient dense foods like sardines and liver and really be on it, I think you could figure it out. I think where the norm of most of us I consider myself, an extraordinarily healthy person, trained nutritionist, shop at the farmer's market. I order my meat direct from farms. A lot of that meat has organ meat mixed in. So I'm getting organ meat and sardines a couple of days a week. And I will say for myself, with that as a baseline, you would be shocked at how many nutrient gaps there were on top of that. And a couple of key nutrients, magnesium being one that's very depleted from the soil, choline that is super important for baby's brain development and a whole host of other things. There's some really good research coming out around choline and COVID, to our kind of earlier conversation around how neuroprotective it is for baby's development, which is really amazing. And kind of the list goes on, that very much see supplements as there's very little downside if you are supplementing appropriately. I think there can be downside with certain companies, for example, folic acid is one of the kind of most commonly recommended, probably the most commonly recommended nutrient in pregnancy. Folic acid is a synthetic man-made nutrient that our bodies aren't used to processing. We really look for, if you want to take folate, the folate form found in food, or methylfolate, which is the active form that is most readily usable by the body, versus folic acid, because there's increasing research kind of showing that we can't metabolize folic acid as readily as the others, and it can bioaccumulate in your system. So there can be a risk to that regard with certain supplement forms. But for the most part, what we've seen and what our practitioner base has seen through testing is that almost without a doubt, there are a widespread number of nutrients that it's so difficult to get through diet alone to get to optimal levels. For a lot of the other ones, it's, beneficial to just make sure you are meeting your needs. And if for some reason you have too much, for a lot of the water soluble vitamins, especially, you can feed them out if it's more than you need. So right. I think we're big advocates that, even if you think you're doing everything right, that there is a role for a highly supportive supplement during pregnancy and postpartum, and really in those months leading up to pregnancy, because you don't know how you're going to feel in that first trimester, or really even throughout pregnancy. And you taking that, if you are conception planning proactively, or that a baby is in your future at some point, being able to get on that prenatal as a security measure earlier rather than later is something that we and our practitioner base really advocates for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've felt comfort this pregnancy in taking the prenatal that I'm on, because with my daughter, I was able to eat way more variety of foods. Even well into my pregnancy, like I ate sardines and some organ meats. And this pregnancy, I've had such strong aversions that it's been so hard. Like I have to, even last night I made we had chicken drumsticks. I almost couldn't eat it. Like I've had such meat aversions. So I have to put it in things. If it's in a salad, great. I can eat it. If it's in some sort of casserole dish, whatever, I could do it. But just eating meat has been very hard for me. And luckily I have a genetic thing where I overproduce iron. So I've had my iron tested several times and my iron levels are always great. But it's brought me comfort knowing that, I still am trying. It's not like I just am like, oh, screw it, I'm just eating donuts because that's all that sounds good. I'm still, actively trying to eat healthy, getting in smoothies, green juice, and salads are basically the only healthy things I can eat. But
well, I feel like getting in the greens is a big step versus a lot of pregnant mamas. So right. It sounds like you're doing pretty well.
I've had such vegetable aversions this pregnancy too. I can eat them raw, like fresh in a salad. I can have them in a smoothie, or I can have them juiced. If I roast broccoli, which I used to love, I have to, I will gag trying to force myself to eat it. And I've forced myself to eat it before, but I'm like, man, if this was just covered in some cheese or something else, I could eat it. But it's also helped me knowing that I'm taking a really good prenatal, that I have something filling in the gaps, and that I'm looking for, to find even other foods to fill in those gaps. Like making sure I'm getting enough protein's been really hard. So grass-fed yogurt has been a big thing for me, since it's hard for me to eat meat in the morning. And so trying to get in protein in other forms, because I know it's important. But also knowing that I have a prenatal that is filling in the gaps. So I'm like, okay, at least I know I'm giving my baby, they're getting what they need. I'm trying with my diet. It's just hard and sucks, but also that I know that I have something filling in the gaps, which has been really reassuring for me. because I did a lot of research too on the prenatals and things that I wanted to take this time around. And it's really interesting because there was like I said with my daughter, like I tried 3 different prenatals, and some of them have really great marketing and they're from really great companies. But then when I actually looked at the back, I'm like, there's no choline in this, like there's no like some of the vital nutrients that you're like, I don't understand like how this is being left out. But also,
it's shocking, but it's helpful. Like choline is, we're the first prenatal on the market to actually just meet the RDA again for choline, and the RDA for choline's RDA was established in 1998 versus 1941 for the first time. Mm-hmm. So I would say some more recent research went into the establishment of its RDA versus a lot of the other vitamins and minerals. But we also were the first prenatal on the market to hit the RDA for pregnancy. And a lot of that is because I think awareness is still not there within the like kind of medical school community of the importance of choline, even though, the research was quite compelling 20 years ago. It can take decades for new research to really infiltrate into standard of care. Plus, it's a really bulky nutrient. So you can't, if your prenatal is 2 capsules, like I can, guarantee you that you're not getting enough choline. And choline is something that isn't that readily available in diet. Like eggs are a great source of it. Some liver meats are a great source of it, but it's not as readily available as in foods as we would hope for such an important nutrient. But that's the trickiness, is I think it is difficult for companies, for manufacturers, if they have a successful product, to revamp it and add choline, because it takes so much space that it would need to, it would call for like a completely new product, basically.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and I want to touch on that too, because your prenatal is 8 pills. And when people hear I take 8 pills, which I take other things on top of that, the probiotic, omegas, other things. So I'm taking a lot of pills every day, but, and I'll share on my Instagram everything I take daily for the listeners so they can see. But, people are like, oh, I can never take 8 pills. Or like I've had people ask like, hey, do you know like of a good prenatal that's just like 1 pill a day I could take? And I'm like, there's no such thing as like 1 pill a day where you're going to get what you need. I know for me, I divide it up. I take 4 in the morning and 4 at night. But like how, when people are like, your pills, your vitamins, 8 pills, like how is that possible? What do you tell them?
It's a lot. And it basically goes straight to magnesium, choline, calcium, which most women tend to be deficient in, alone take up 4.5 of the capsules, I want to say.
Yeah.
So if you want to be able to get those nutrients, you need more than a handful of pills. I will say we just launched a 3 capsule essentials version, which we do think is the best kind of pared down prenatal on the market. If you are someone that like really struggles with pills, it can be a great option. Or if you're someone that like, you're just extraordinarily confident in your diet, or you're not actively trying right now, so you don't want to pay for the full throttle version and just want something that to give you some baseline support in the intermediate period, can be a great option. And hopefully that can make it easier for moms. That it's like, okay, it's 1 capsule per meal, and maybe that makes it more accessible. But there are certain nutrients whereby, in an ideal world, in pregnancy or active kind of postpartum recovery while you're nursing, we would love you to have more, but you're going to be much better supported on this option than almost anything else on the market if pills really are difficult for you. So that's a great option. And then I think, as you'd mentioned earlier, we do have a powdered version as well, which Our powder has been sort of very popular. It's vanilla flavored, throw it into smoothies as just an alternative for folks that don't like pills, or powder is it's an amazing, we didn't necessarily have a quantity threshold whereby, oh my gosh, we have to get it into, 8 pills. Our powder has a little bit higher dosages of choline, magnesium, and calcium than the capsules. So our powdered version kind of would be around 13 to 15 pills, depending on how you pack it in. So the powder gives you a nice kind of alternative, especially if you're a smoothie maker, to take your prenatal in a different form. And many will kind of roll it into protein bites or do other things with it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is, again, like such a great option for people who have trouble taking vitamins, right? So I'd love for you to kind of tell us about your team at Needed. So I know that you and Julie kind of paired up, and then who else did you bring on? Like, how did you kind of put together this team of experts to help you develop these prenatals?
Yeah, so it's really Julie and I in the beginning digging into the research ourselves. And then we just began, I think, interviewing a bunch of different practitioners, honestly showing up at their doors who we found on Instagram or were referred to through friends who seemed to have a passion for this space, and began sort of, I think, just asking as many questions as we could around, we don't think prenatals are cutting it. Like, do you agree? What do you wish, a prenatal looked like? And that sort of just, I think, opening of listening to practitioners, asking what they're really seeing in practice, and having them kind of provide us with their, like, if I could design a prenatal, this would be my wish list. I know this is what my patients really need, and this would make it so much easier for them. Ended up being a really energizing thing for a number of practitioners. So we were lucky that we are able to convince sort of, I think, a nice handful of amazing, very well-regarded kind of practitioners across a few different disciplines to join us early on in the early research and formulation. And it was a big endeavor that we line by line researched every single kind of like vitamin, mineral, and a few other nutrients to determine what is the best form, what is the best dosage, and what is the best source. Went straight to a lot of the manufacturing facilities, reviewed extensive C of A's, did some third-party testing ourselves to really handpick, every single nutrient that went into our prenatal, and weighed it against where is safety data? How do we know this is safe for all women to take, whether or not they, are someone that eats liver 3 times a week, or there's someone that follows a vegan diet, and we can help guide depending on where they are on the spectrum of, this is going to be a great baseline starting point for you no matter what. And then depending on what the rest of your kind of system looks like, there might be moments where, you need a lot more. If you're not a meat eater, for example, we have a vitamin D add-on where, or you don't live in a sunny area, that there's 4,000 IU of vitamin D in our prenatals, which is a very well kind of studied dose to be supportive in pregnancy. But depending on sort of lifestyle, genetic factors, what you eat, many women need more. So we introduced a vitamin D topper for you to bring that next to life. So that was the big part of the bulk of the kind of initial research of coming up with our wish list of, here are the nutrient forms, here are the dosages, and here are, I guess that was part 1. Part 2 was then validating the suppliers. And then in part 3, it was really bringing in some experienced kind of PhD biochemists who really understood the product manufacturing and formulation process, such that we had the support to translate what would we get ideally to what actually can fit together and, biochemically work, as there are nutrient interactions both inside, the bottle itself, and then in how your kind of body processes certain nutrients. And that led to some of our decisions to expand the number of products that we offer. So in our complete plan, what we're known for, there are 4 core products. So one is a prenatal multivitamin, mineral, and antioxidant blend. It has most everything you would think would be in a standard prenatal, but at more supportive dosages and in optimal forms, except for we removed iron and cell and iron separately. Because really what we began to understand is there wasn't a dosage for iron that we could get comfortable with that would support a wide population of women taking the product. So that was number one, that iron needs varied so significantly by life stage and by person that we didn't want to say, this is the one kind of dosage for you. Second, too much iron can be very harmful to the microbiome and a couple of other things. So didn't want to overdose certain women. And then iron can impact and interfere with the absorption of a few of the other nutrients in the product. So really do like and prefer you to take your iron away from us. So that was a decision that we made there. Next, omega-3s, DHA, probably a buzzword you've heard of part of pregnancy. Love pairing it with EPA, another kind of omega-3 fatty acid form, since the two have kind of different mechanisms of action within the body that both are really important. DHA really builds cell membrane, so is what is really known for building baby's brain and keeping mom's brain healthy. And then EPA is a precursor to a lot of hormone-related production processes, so helps with hormone balance and inflammatory management. And we think both being there is highly important in a prenatal. In many prenatals, omega-3 is combined with the vitamins and minerals. And we just had saw with our manufacturers enough questions around stability and quality and how you're able to maintain that if it is mixed with other substances. So that led to us launching a separate omega-3 versus combining it into the same product. And then our 2 other products that I'll quickly run through is we made a prenatal pre and probiotic, since really microbiome support is so foundational to nutrient levels. Like what's in your gut really dictates what you're able to absorb, both from food and from supplements. And having that sort of pre-probiotic that is very supportive of making sure you could actually process the nutrients you were taking and set up the foundation of, certain strains that are really known to help with pregnancy outcomes. And, you're growing baby's microbiome in utero, and it continues to expand through the birth process and through breastfeeding, being able to know that you have the right strains that are clinically known to support baby versus, I think yogurt and fermented foods are amazing. They're a huge part of my diet, but there's not the guarantee of getting the certain strains that are very important to be there at this stage of life. That was a hugely important addition for us. And that product has really, in many ways, become our bestseller, since it's so unique versus other ones on the market and so targeted for this stage. And then lastly, collagen protein was added to the mix because we found again and again, it's just difficult for women to meet their overall protein levels in pregnancy, since the requirement goes up so significantly. And there are a lot of muted versions. And in doing so, the amino acids in collagen aren't readily available in kind of the most common meats we eat on a day-to-day basis, like chicken breast or, ground turkey or whatever it is. They're really much more available in the skins and organ meats. So it's a helpful addition in terms of how they support certain immune system, skin building processes in the body. So anyways, long conversation there, but that it really was a ground up, very intentional, multiple different kind of cooks in the kitchen involved in checking every single box as part of the process to build this, what we think of, it's funny. It's, our complete plan for before, during, and after pregnancy, but it really is that plan for, how do you optimally get your baseline needs met, which is ironic since it's the most kind of comprehensive on the market. But we'll say this is there are times and places where some women will need even more on top of the complete plan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that. That was going to be my next question, was about like, what other supplements do you need to look at on top of a prenatal to make sure you're meeting some of those needs? And I did actually an episode with Dr. Rhonda Patrick about omegas and breastfeeding, and it was super interesting. Since talking with her, I upped my omegas like a bunch. She takes a crazy amount. I don't even remember. It was like she takes not milligrams, grams of omegas every day of DHA. And that is one thing that if I have eaten a lot of really good like seafood that week, I may not, if I'm having salmon that day or sardines, I may not take my omega that day.
In the same way that if I am having salmon that day, I won't take it, but I want to take it every other day in the week when I'm not having that salmon serving or sardine serving.
But this pregnancy, I've been taking it almost every day. I was actually going to make salmon salad today because I kind of make it almost like a tuna salad. And I hide sardines in there with it. So I put it all together, add some pickles, pregnancy food.
Yeah. I know you've had Dr. Alana Ramel on the podcast too.
Yeah.
Who was very involved in the design of our supplement and a lot of that early research, who's amazing. But anyways, that made me think of she makes a tuna sardine casserole that of how do you hide the sardines within tuna that I really love and does add to, I think for many, it's gotten my husband to be willing to eat sardines, which is a big one.
Yeah, same. My husband doesn't really he doesn't like salmon salad. He likes salmon, but he doesn't like the salmon salad. But I also I love that you guys have the probiotic as well, because that's another thing that kind of, I think, gets left out. And there's a couple of studies that also show that for women who are taking a probiotic, I think 3 weeks before their GBS test, their Group B strep test, tested negative. So for me, that's always I don't want to test positive, especially at the hospital and antibiotics and all that. So
yeah, I think that's true. And the only thing I would say is just, it's possible. I think some of the probiotics are amazing that you can change the GBS test in 3 weeks, but it gives me caution that I think there's a number of companies out there that will, suggest this is your third trimester probiotic. And I would just advocate for start sooner as just giving more time to be able to reset your microbiome versus leaving it to the 3 weeks before the test. It's something I would very much just advocate for in setting you up for success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and helping, your baby's immune system starts to grow inside of you, and that probiotic definitely helps with that.
We used to think the uterus was a sterile environment, and now we know it's not. That the uterus has its own kind of microbiome, and babies is beginning to be built in utero, which is pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one thing, I haven't done an episode on it yet, but I would love to, is when you have a vaginal birth, the baby's getting so many probiotics just coming through the vaginal canal and being coated. And that's kind of their first line of defense, and helps build their immune system. So first of all, not rubbing them down with the blanket and washing them off right away is super important. But if you end up having a C-section or a belly birth, that you can do vaginal seeding and swab the inside of your vagina and then wipe it on the baby's skin to kind of help them get some of that those vaginal probiotics that are good. But you also want to make sure that you're building that probiotic environment by supporting your microbiome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just did a vaginal microbiome test not that long ago to make sure all is in a good place. And just froze my swabs in case we do need a transfer.
Yeah. Wait, tell me more about this. There's a vaginal microbiome test?
Yeah. So there's, it's actually a company called EP201. It's pretty amazing. So it's, two girls that I went to college with. I didn't know them in college. They were like more closer to my younger brother's age, but we did a same, basically fellowship while we were there that has a very tight knit community. And they are really on a mission to sort of decode the vaginal microbiome and help us understand it better. And they've launched a pretty amazing comprehensive test that can give you a lot of insight in terms of, what's going on there, and give suggestions around if your vaginal, microbiome, which even like outside of pregnancy is so important for, women's health, from UTIs to just general comfort with sex and the whole host of things goes on. It's worth checking out. EVVY, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely going to look into that. Because one thing that I get worried about is every once in a while, since having a kid, I feel like my microbiome's been thrown off because I'm more prone to yeast infections. And then when I get sick, so for some reason, anytime I get sick, I get a yeast infection. So with COVID, like a few days ago, I noticed I started like getting a little bit itchy and whatever. And I'm like, ugh. But I always just try to like do it yourself, treat it as much as I can. And then if I need to get extra help, I will. So
yeah, this is all for another episode, but yeah, I definitely will use the, again, I don't know how much we want to go into this, but like Nancy's yogurt, they have some of the highest quality kind of lacto BIF strains within their yogurt. So, if I have issues down there, talk to your doctor. I don't want to disclaim this, but we'll do vaginal inserts of that yogurt too, which has made a huge, huge difference for me.
Mm-hmm. Nice. I'm going to have to look into that too. And then before we wrap up, I also just want to talk about you guys, since you have the complete package that includes sperm health, supplements for men, which is something that's often left out of the equation. So I'd love for you to kind of touch on what inspired you guys to make the male supplement and to include them in this prenatal journey.
Yeah. I mean, I think like a lot of what we do, a lot of it is personal and really backed by rigorous research, but males, I think, are often forgotten as part of the conception journey, and the rates of kind of male infertility in this country are skyrocketing. And I think had, stories of a lot of good friends and struggling to get pregnant and, them trying everything and being this emotional process finally as a last stage after many years, tested their husbands and realized that it was a sperm quality factor of his that, I think a lot of it is just a hope of sharing that it is a problem for many and that there are, things that you can do about it if you're aware. I think the amazing part about sperm is that they regenerate about every 90 days so that you can have, and they're very, very sensitive to the environment whereby they are generated in. So nutrition can have a big, big impact on sperm quality, morphology, movement, kind of the list goes on. And sperm quality impacts embryo quality. And I think that connection just isn't a part of our dialogue right now. And that was, I think, the intention for launching the men's plan as well. I think to be basically two-part of like raise awareness of healthy sperm is an important component to making a healthy baby, and raising awareness that nutrition can change and help promote healthy sperm. And then I think just men like women, diets are often not meeting all of our needs. And if you think about just a dad, a husband, a partner, a friend, like being in their optimal kind of place so they have the best, energy and immune system and a whole host of other things. Sometimes extra support is needed. So those products were very much designed with the intention of fertility in mind, and how do you kind of start your prenatal journey together, and both when you as the female start your prenatal, have your partner start on his prenatal as well, but set up in a way that it can be something that he continues with for years. And for the men, it is our complete plan is a 3-part versus a 4-part. Men can absolutely take the collagen as well, but we found that just through the research that with just different caloric intakes and the way that men eat in a standard way, and that they don't have the exacerbated protein needs that women do in pregnancy and nursing, that a protein supplement for them was a nice to have versus a must have. So instead we sort of refine theirs down to easier taking to 3 products. It's a 4-capsule multivitamin, an omega-3, and then they have a pre and probiotic as well that is designed differently than our prenatal one, as there's some very specific strains and prebiotic antioxidants that are clinically studied to support sort of sperm health and male hormone balance that we wanted to be in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so important. People often forget that, 50% of the genetic makeup of this embryo is coming from that sperm, and that's huge. And I recently heard, and I haven't done too much research into this, but I guess it's something that's being researched, is that the sperm is actually responsible for the development of the placenta initially, and then the woman's body kind of takes over. And so I thought that was super interesting and something to look into.
I hadn't heard that, but I'm very curious to dig into more. Yeah,
I know. So like I said, I haven't done a lot of research on it, but I'm like, that's very, very interesting. Also, there's tons of studies that link, like men who smoke marijuana, you're more likely to have a miscarriage. The female's likely to have a miscarriage for regular marijuana users. It affects the morphology of the sperm. Men who drink a lot throughout the week, you're 40% more likely to have a congenital heart defect. And there's just like a lot of studies and things linking to it. So you're more than just a sperm donor. You're contributing health and genes and genetic makeup to the future health of your child. So
it's true.
It is really
and
important.
It's hard. It's like, I think like, I was very much, my husband was on a preconception. We did a lot of preconception, preparing for pregnancy planning. I had some gut issues. So it was like a year-long journey to make sure my microbiome was in a place whereby I wanted to pass it along to the baby. But when we were getting near the end, he was on a 4-month regime too for sperm health. And I think that was just it was shocking, because that's not something that plenty of women will kind of prepare to conceive, but men doing so is not the norm. But I was like, all right, but the second I get pregnant, you're off the hook. I think there's some caution around that with just, but there is an increasing, and in some ways, truthfully, what's shocking is in many ways, there's more research on sperm.
Yeah.
That because I think just most of the doctors and researchers are male, that we have a very strong understanding of the things that impact sperm quality and how it leads to bad outcomes. It's just not a part of our dialogue.
Right. So if you're listening and you're like, I got to sign up for these prenatals, I'm going to try to conceive soon, or I am pregnant, you can rope your partner into it. If your husband's like mine, he's just going to blindly take whatever you put in his hand or lay out on the counter for him or put in his pill case for him. That's what my husband does. If I don't put it out for him, he won't take it. But if I lay it out, he's like, oh, okay, and just takes it. So other
than with some resistance, because I will say, because we're so many things in product development, that my husband ends up being a guinea pig for a lot of new stuff, and some stuff has made him sick as part of the testing process. So he has a little bit more what are you giving me today? Right. Is it going to be okay?
Yeah, I'm a little cautious about this. You guys also recently rolled out your magnesium and chamomile thing. What's it called? Sleep aid?
Yeah, we have a sleep support product now, sleep and relaxation support product. And, really the intention behind that is, sleep support in pregnancy is so important in terms of how it leads to health for mom and baby and just mom feeling her best, and can be difficult. But most of the things that we took in a pre-pregnancy environment to support sleep are often not recommended in pregnancy. So wanted to introduce something that was safe and delicious. And it's a chamomile tea with some added magnesium, glycine, and L-theanine, which are all known to be very supportive of kind of different parts of the brain impacting sleep.
Yeah, I've been enjoying it. I've been having it before bed every night, and I really like it. I'm a big tea person. My husband and I both drink a lot of tea in the evening, like every night, 1 or 2 cups. And I've been really enjoying it. So,
yeah. And then the other one that just launched that I'm like particularly excited about, and it came out just in time. So I'm, I guess, 37 and a half weeks pregnant as we're recording, so nearing the end, but my uterine fluid levels were low. And I think because I didn't give up coffee, and then I was drinking, too much red raspberry leaf tea at the final stages of pregnancy, and both are diuretics. And anyways, I've been using our hydration support, which again can be very important for pregnancy and breastfeeding in these last few weeks to bring up my levels. And it's a great add of being entirely kind of fruit sweetened, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't tried that one yet. I'll have to try it. I always try to get some electrolytes in every day because sometimes I struggle drinking water, and I always forget about red raspberry leaf tea. I did it last pregnancy. My labor I feel like I did all the things last time, and she was sunny side up and ace in clinic. So just the way she was positioned made it very long and very hard. And I had done spinning babies, curb walking, everything. And so this baby, I'm just like, maybe I'll drink it. Maybe I won't. We'll see.
Yeah.
So every a couple times a week, I'll be like, oh yeah, I should have some of that. And I'll make some during the day, some red raspberry leaf tea, but probably not enough to make a difference. I will be eating the dates though. I have it set in my calendar, what day to start. I will be eating the dates every day. There's some really good research and studies on that. So
there are. And I think it's I think it's a little mixed, but I really like dates. So I'm
Same.
I'm very happy about having my dates and almond butter every day.
Yeah. They're it's a dessert. It's so sweet. I love it. So it's not a problem for me at all. But yeah, I will be doing that again. Well, I just want to thank you so much for coming on and for this conversation and just kind of teaching us what needs to be in a prenatal, what to look out for, that, what we kind of need to do to fill in our gaps, and one pill's not enough. And I'd love for you just to tell everybody where they can find out more about Needed and all of your products.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. Our website is thisisneeded.com, and we're at Needed on Instagram. And then if you do want to dig in, as I know we covered some of the concepts at the high level, but if you really want to go into the decision about, what form of vitamin A, how much vitamin A, how did you get to that? How do I know it's safe? We have a guide on our website for what to look for in a prenatal vitamin that goes into this in a quite comprehensive way. So be on the lookout for that. Or if you have any questions, feel free to DM us or email us at hello@thisisneeded.com, as we, very much like to be a resource wherever you are on your prenatal journey. We've reviewed 75 prenatals that are on the market right now, and kind of can help you if for some reason, ours doesn't work. You're happy with your 2-capsule prenatal, but you want to know what are the couple of nutrients that I just absolutely should fill in the gaps in. We're here to give that advice. So we're hopeful we can be helpful in any way.
That's awesome. And I will include the prenatal guide in the show notes and the This Is Needed website and Instagram and all of that as well. So I just want to thank you so much, Ryan, for coming on. Congratulations on your pregnancy and almost going to meet your baby here soon. So I'm excited to catch up with you after.
You as well. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. I love learning about the science behind it, and I wanted to ask like 1,000 more questions, just like digging into the nutrition. But like she says, they have that prenatal guide on their website. So even if you're choosing not to use their prenatal, it's telling you what to look for and everything that goes into it. So I'm going to attach that in the show notes. Also, I do have a discount for you guys if you want to check out Needed, that I will also attach in the show notes as well with the affiliate link attached. And I'm just really glad that I found their company because, like I said, just the the amount of attention and detail and every little thing that went into it is just so amazing, and their passion behind it and how they even got into it, all of it is really cool. And it's hard to find a good prenatal out there. It really is. Like I said, with Jovi, I used 3, maybe even 4 different prenatals, just trying different ones out and being like, okay, I like this one, but it doesn't have these things in it. And I like that one, but it doesn't have that in it. But then I like this other one. And I will tell you, the only other prenatal that I kind of liked was like 6 or 7 pills as well. So if you're taking 1 to 2 capsules, it most likely is not giving you everything that you need, not filling in those nutritional gaps that you might need. So either look into implementing those in your diet, supplementing in other ways, or switching over to Needed. All right, I'm excited to share the podcast coming up. Because we had COVID, I ended up having to reschedule. I had like 4 podcasts I was supposed to record last week. I had to reschedule all of them because I sounded and felt like crap. And so now I'm rescheduling and getting everything back on the books. I did just record an episode about sex and intimacy that is really exciting, that I'm excited to share. We kind of got into it in that episode. And Irene she's just awesome. I love the work that she's doing. So that'll be coming up soon. And a few other podcasts that I'm just really, really excited to share with you guys. So make sure that you are staying up to date, subscribed, and reaching out to me and letting me know what you want to hear, what topics, what guests. I'll do my best to make it happen. I am going to be recording a bunch of episodes in advance to go on maternity leave. I think my last recording is like the first week in March, and then I don't really plan on recording anything for a month. But you can continue to reach out and let me know what and who you want to hear. All right. I love you guys. I hope that you are having a great new year, a great January, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Bye.
If you want to be the most interesting person at the cocktail party, well, hop on over and listen to the Brain Candy podcast.
Our award-winning content will have you laughing while you're learning.
We read all the best articles, books, and studies, and keep up with new TV shows, documentaries, and pop culture. And then we cram it all into 2 shows a week.
Conspiracy theories, cannibal rabbits, unsolved mysteries, the history of the Walkman. There's something for everyone.
The Brain Candy podcast. Find our link in the show notes.
Or simply search for the Brain Candy podcast on your podcast app.